Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Jorgens, and I'm the Director of International House for the University of Chicago, and I'm President of International Houses Worldwide, which today is a network of 17 houses on 4 continents. I'm also an alumna of the university, receiving my MA from the Social Sciences Division and my PhD from the Department of History. And I should add, a fellow Minnesotan. I'm originally from Golden Valley. Oftentimes I hear, and I'm sure you've heard many times as well, that the University of Chicago is characterized as unique or uncommon. And this gives me a great sense of pride. Fittingly, the University of Chicago campaign, Inquiry and Impact, is also unique and uncommon. And I want to tell you 2 reasons why this is the case. The first reason is the size of our campaign. A $4.5 billion comprehensive campaign, which puts us in the top 5 largest campaigns in the history of higher education. The second reason is the scope of our goals. At the same time we announced the $4.5 billion fundraising goal, we also announced an alumni engagement goal, a goal to engage 125,000 of our alumni during the lifetime of our campaign. Other universities have had engagement goals as part of their campaign totals, but to launch it publicly and to measure it, just as much as we are measuring the $4.5 billion fundraising campaign, this makes us the first university to do so. We're making strong progress on both. We recently reached the milestone of raising $3 billion. By coming this afternoon, you are counted among the nearly 75,000 engaged alumni and thousands of connected friends. I'd also like to share a few more statistics with you. Engaging 125,000 alumni represents about 70% of our alumni community. So this is really an ambitious goal. Over 2,300 alumni live and/or work in Minnesota. Over 2,100 alumni live or work in the Twin Cities area. And of the Twin Cities area alumni population, the top 5 schools or units represented are 31% from the Booth School of Business, 25% from the college, 9% from the Social Sciences Division, 7% from the law school, and 7% from the Division of the Humanities. 54% of all of these alumni have graduated since 1990. And now I'd like to share our engagement goals and our progress in this second area. During the campaign, which is from 2014 to 2019, our goal is to engage 1,550 alumni from the Twin Cities area. To date, 883 alumni from the Twin Cities area have been engaged in the campaign, and so we're about 57% toward reaching our goal. 29% of the cumulative campaign engagement from the Twin Cities area has come from attending events such as this one today. Engaged alumni from the Twin Cities area currently average 3 instances of engagement since the beginning of the campaign. So that means going to an event, making a gift, helping or volunteering, or connecting with our community online. You are all key to reaching our ambitious goals by engaging yourself and inviting fellow alumni to engage. As I said, there are many ways to engage. to go to an event, to make a gift, to help or volunteer, or to connect online. Thank you all for being here this afternoon and for making our university one of the great centers of education, discovery, and impact. Enjoy the afternoon.
The University of Chicago is urban,
global, courageous,
unusual,
phenomenal,
rigorous,
fabulous,
outspoken,
economics and pizza,
pushing borders,
invigorating,
an intellectual crucible
that pushes you to be your best every day.
From its inception, the University of Chicago focused on rigorous, intense inquiry. It's defined everything about what the University of Chicago is today and what it will be in the future.
The core curriculum is the symbol of who we are. Our mission is to get very talented students and to put them through a program of systematic, interdisciplinary training, and 4 years later graduate Chicago intellectuals.
I'll bring up a discovery that we've made, then I'll proceed to criticize my own discovery. It's through self-criticism you create a learning culture of critical inquiry.
We aren't just talking at each other, we're listening. And at the end of the class, I might have a completely different perspective on the issue.
Some excellent students over the years. They were very much my teachers. It changed my work. It just exposed me to a world of ideas.
I was the beneficiary of a scholarship from the University of Chicago. I could not have gone to business school without that scholarship.
I just feel so grateful that I was selected to kind of be among the minds and the intelligence and the incredible people. It's been the best experience of my life.
I think supporting young people to pursue their dreams opens up the world to you. All we ask of anybody is that they do the same to the next generation.
The university is really made by the people in it.
really very competitive.
Very unruly.
Seeing all the crazy, amazing things that they're doing.
Curing diabetes, cancer.
Innovation, more entrepreneurship, new ventures, new technologies.
Really forces me to push for something beyond what I'm doing.
In higher education today, the humanities are really in retreat. We really think that it's a responsibility to continue to foster growth of the humanities. The Collegium will allow teams of humanists from all over the world to tackle problems that society needs to deal with.
The Institute of Molecular Engineering is organized around solving water, energy, health problems through designing matter from molecules up. Just solving one of all of these problems that we're working on would be tremendous.
You're part of an intellectual community
that attracts individuals who are intellectually fearless.
That will bring together experts from different disciplines to help solve problems. We're exploring opportunities to create more portals for the community and people in the city to come into the university and both get some of the knowledge that we have, but also share their knowledge with us.
Lots of people are skeptical about the ability to use social programs to prevent crime. What we've tried to do is to generate evidence that is so rigorous and so compelling that the most skeptical skeptic will have to acknowledge that there's really something here. 1 year of participation in the Youth Guidance and Becoming a Man program reduced violent crime arrests to these kids by over 40%, which I think really challenges the conventional wisdom that the only way that you can control crime and violence in the United States is through locking up millions and millions of people.
And if you show the impact, it has global reach. Billions of people, not just millions, billions of people that you can get to.
It's very important in a world which is becoming more integrated that you have these global universities.
We now have a rather more ambitious global strategy with the same gold standard quality of curriculum and teaching.
Students are going to want an experience of understanding other cultures because this is going to be the world that they are functioning in over the coming decades.
Can we bring people, scholars, politicians, administrators from these different areas also together to discuss what's going on?
To debate the big challenges facing the world.
Human illness limits society, and accordingly, fixing that, addressing it, is hugely important. It's transformative.
I had been diagnosed with metastatic or advanced breast cancer. The first thing Dr. Fumi Olapati said to me is, I want to find out more about your tumor so that I can personalize the treatment for both you and the tumor. The survival rate for metastatic diseases was 1 to 2 years. I really must say that I have survived the odds. I mean, I'm still sitting here, standing here 10 years plus.
You know what? It's worth every day getting up and supporting patients like her.
We have an enormous obligation to the people who gave us the opportunity today to do what we do with these young people, and in turn, they have an obligation to support those who come after us.
The question for us today is, how do we realize these values in a powerful way going forward?
Together, we are spreading grace and humanity.
Together we are thinking about ways in which you could have an impact on society.
Together
We have the potential to change the way people think about urban problems.
Together,
we make amazing discoveries possible.
It's part of our DNA. It's who we are.
It's a big, big universe here.
Ours is the university of great discoveries.
Ours is the university of fearless inquiry.
Ours is the university that develops ideas that change the world.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Evans. I'm a graduate of the college in 1991, and I serve as president of the University Alumni Club here of the Twin Cities. I'm so glad all of you were able to join us for this opportunity to dive into UChicago scholarship and also have the opportunity to socialize, relax, and enjoy a wonderful Minnesota spring day. I'm honored in introducing today's Harper lecture with Professor Kalil. In addition to co-directing the Behavioral Insights and Parenting Lab, Professor Kalil teaches at the University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy, and is director of the Center for Human Potential and Public Policy, a developmental psychologist who studies economic conditions, parenting, and child development. Professor Kalil recently focused on the historical evolution of income-based gaps in parenting behavior and children's cognitive and non-cognitive skills. Join me in giving Professor Kalil a warm welcome.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming out. It's a beautiful day outside, and I'm delighted to be here. Before I begin my own remarks about my research, I would like to share with you some exciting news from the University of Chicago and from the Harris School in particular, where I am finishing my 16th year on the faculty. And I have a few things to let you know. First of all, we are both delighted and a bit sad that the dean of the Harris School, Daniel Diermeyer, has just been named the next provost of the University of Chicago. He will start his new post this summer, and we have just nominated Professor Kerwin Charles of the Harris School as our interim dean while we conduct an international search for the next dean. I also would like to let you know exciting news about the new building that the Harris School will occupy starting in 2018 due to a generous gift of our university trustee, Dennis Keller. We'll move into a brand new building which will triple our size and, most importantly, our classroom space for our growing student population. In terms of programmatic developments, we have a very exciting new focus on international global conflict. At the Harris School, you may have heard that the Pearson Family Foundation chose the Harris School to establish the Pearson Institute this year, focused on this topic, and it was the second largest gift in the history of the University of Chicago, and we're absolutely thrilled that this will allow for growth on faculty and student programming. And finally, I just want to let you know about our new efforts at the school with the Center for Economic Policy under the directorship of Thomas Coleman, who's the former executive director and senior advisor at the Becker-Friedman Institute for Research and Economics. We will make a priority in teaching public policy students about financial markets and the application of theoretical tools to practical problems in fixed income valuation and risk management. So just a smattering of exciting news from the Harris School and the university. And so I'd like to turn our focus next to the work that I do and the remarks that I'll share with you over the next 30 minutes or so. And I want to begin by orienting you towards the problem that has captured my interest in my scholarly inquiry for really as long as I've been at it. And that is the focus on increasing the life chances of economically disadvantaged children. And the reason I am so drawn to inquiry in this area is the fact that disadvantaged children, as you probably know, fare worse than economically advantaged children on just about everything we can measure. And we can observe these gaps in development from the very earliest point at which we can reliably measure cognitive or behavioral outcomes for children. And so you probably know that economically disadvantaged children do worse in school, obtain fewer years of schooling, they earn less and are more likely to be poor as adults. They are in worse health and are more likely to commit and to be the victim of crime over their lifetime. And if we just think for a moment about the gap in cognitive test scores that we observe between economically advantaged and disadvantaged children, you can see here this chart showing cognitive test scores of children of mothers who have, in the top bar, a college education versus those in the bars below that red one whose mothers have less education. We see that these gaps in children's test scores are present, again, as early as we can reliably measure them here at age 3. But the really important thing I want you to focus on in this chart here is that these gaps hardly diminish at all over the course of children's school years. This should tell us two things, or should make us think about two things. One is that schools are not likely to be the only source for closing achievement gaps. It may be that in the absence of schooling, these gaps would grow even larger over the course of children's school years. But we certainly can't imagine, I think, looking at this figure and many others like it, that we can put the locus or the onus of responsibility on our school system to close those achievement gaps between rich and poor children. We have known this fact for a long time, and as a nation, we have tried many different strategies for closing the achievement gap. And indeed, evaluations of model and experimental preschool programs, such as the Perry Preschool Program or the Abecedarian Early Childhood Intervention, raised our hopes considerably for expanding preschool for disadvantaged children that could help close these achievement gaps. And as you can see here, just showing you a sort of stylized picture of the results from those Perry and Abecedarian programs, children who participated in the program or who had the benefit of receiving the treatment performed better on many different measures, including here the share who graduated from high school. But we have a whole set of measures that showed a lot of promise. Unfortunately, evaluations of bigger and more scaled up and more widespread programs in this country, such as Head Start, for example, which is the main government-funded preschool in this country for low-income children, suggest far more modest impacts. So an experimental evaluation of the Head Start program showed that it has, at best, modest effects on improving children's cognitive and behavioral readiness for school. And this is perhaps not surprising if you think a little more about this issue. And that is because in the US, children will spend only about 13% of their waking hours between the birth and age 18 in school. And even children who attend full-day preschool from age 3 will only spend about 15% of their waking hours in school. So if we consider that fact, it might not be especially surprising to us that neither preschool nor primary or secondary schooling does much to close the achievement gaps in child outcomes. And that suggests to us, and to the work that I do with my colleagues at the Harris School, that the key to closing the gap in child outcomes is closing the gap in what families do with their children. It is our opinion that focusing on schools is not really going to be a sufficient strategy for helping promote the life chances of low-income children. We really need to think a lot harder about how to support families, especially low-income families, in helping support their children's development. So to do that, we have to think for a moment about how can we understand parent engagement in children's learning and development in low-income families. Many people have thought about this problem, and I would say that the most important thing that we should be aware of is the fact that economically disadvantaged parents spend much less time engaged with their children's learning and early development than do their higher income or more highly educated counterparts. You can see here the red bars show the number of minutes per day spent by mothers who have a college degree in a set of activities from the left, basic care and play and teaching activities, relative to those mothers who have completed only high school. And you may say, well, those differences aren't all that big. It's just a handful of minutes per day. But if you add up all those minutes across the course of a year or several years, for example, if we just think about the number of minutes, the gap in the number of minutes of teaching activities, if we aggregate that up over the course of the year, that's 158 hours less time in teaching that children in less economically advantaged households benefit from. That in itself is equivalent to more than half a year of school for those children. So this is just one example of many I could show you, and this is a long-standing problem that many different programs have been developed to address. And the programs that we typically think of that have aimed to support parent engagement with their children's development typically combine two approaches. They often include a classroom setting or group instruction for parents to come together as a small group to learn information about parenting. And this is based on the assumption that less educated mothers or low-income parents don't know how to effectively engage with their children or don't have the skills or know the tools to promote children's early learning. Another set of programs is very intensive and sends one by one a nurse, home visitor, or a paraprofessional to families' homes to demonstrate to mothers how to effectively interact with their children. I would say that both of these types of programs are incredibly demanding of parents' time and attention. Asking parents to come to a multi-week or multi-month program at a neighborhood community center, one night per week or one weekend afternoon, or to open up their homes on a regular basis to invite a professional in and make time for that person. Turns out to be taxing, as I said, for both parents' time and attention. And how do we know that? Well, we observe that both by observing how much parents actually participate in these programs and what they tell us about the participation that they do engage in. And what we see here is that attrition is high and engagement is low in these types of programs. So in the Nurse-Family Partnership Program, for example, half of the participants have left the program by the halfway point. If we ask parents in a very well-known program like Early Head Start, how engaged are you in the program? Basically, how much do you like being in this program that you volunteered to come to? Parents are not particularly enthusiastic. And again, we see this in the low rates of participation. And I really want to underscore this point that most of our current programs use this kind of information model that I alluded to. And as I said, they work primarily on the theory that economically disadvantaged parents need more information, that they don't know that they should be talking with their children, that they don't know they should be reading regularly to their children, and that what programs ought to do is simply provide this information to parents. But our work shows something different. And we believe that information is in fact usually not the problem. We find in our research with low-income families in the city of Chicago that parents do know that their children benefit when they spend time with them. And we show here, if we ask parents, for example, if you were to read more minutes per day with your child, how much improvement would you expect to see in that child's cognitive development? Parents, in fact, do believe that investing in their kids' cognitive development will result in better educational outcomes. And so we have a puzzle. We know from lots of survey data that we have big gaps in the amount of time that low and high income parents spend with their children on a measure that we believe to be important, such as reading with their children. Even though we know from our surveys and from others that parents believe that this is an important activity, they believe it will have a return in terms of their children's development. We've done research that shows, in fact, they enjoy spending that kind of time with their children just as much as do their higher income counterparts. But why do we see these differences in the actual amount of time that is spent? And our way of thinking about this problem is that what we want to do is close the gap between what parents tell us they aspire to do and what they actually do. And we sort of think metaphorically about how to solve this puzzle of putting these two pieces together. And so about 2 years ago, with my colleague Susan Mayer, who is the former dean of the Harris School, I formed the Behavioral Insights in Parenting Lab at the Harris School. And we are driven by the mission of solving this puzzle. And I want to tell you about some of the work we've done, but first I'd like to explain what we mean by behavioral insights and why we decided to call our lab the Behavioral Insights in Parenting Lab. And so I'll do a quick detour into the field of behavioral science, which you may have heard of behavioral economics. Basically, it's a whole field that's drawn from social psychology and cognitive science, but goes by a couple of different terms. And one of the key things that this field has revealed to us about human behavior is that the decisions we make are influenced by a number of cognitive biases or cognitive roadblocks that we all experience. And that these common patterns of thinking that are shaped by our social context can often result in less than optimal decision making. And I'm going to talk, just to give you an example of a specific cognitive bias that we have focused on in our research. So imagine the following scenario. Just take a look at this delicious chocolate donut and remind yourself of the promise you made to yourself, maybe January 1st, to swear off chocolate donuts and the like for some indefinite period of time. But the breakfast meeting comes along, and the tray is put right in front of you, and this is your absolute favorite donut, and it was made by your local heritage donut shop. And really, you just, what are you going to do? And are you going to give in, or are you going to remember that pledge to yourself where you focused on your future self who was maybe 5 or 10 pounds lighter? And it really is the case that it is incredibly hard for all of us to delay gratification in the moment for some future reward. And in behavioral science, the term for this is called present bias. And the idea here is that one can put so much weight on gratification in the present that we fail to invest for the future. And we all do this. And that's really, I think, if you remember nothing else about what I say today, it's that all of us are subject to this cognitive bias. So we put off exercise today because we just promise ourselves we'll do it tomorrow. We don't save as much as we ought to for retirement because we're too enticed by the consumption opportunities that we have today, and so on. I'm sure you can think of many examples in your own life as a knowledgeable person who is well aware and has complete information about the merits of doing what you ought to do, and yet we don't do it. And what we argue in our lab is that this present bias can prevent us from making optimal decisions, as per the examples I've just given you. And we really want to think about this in terms of the choices and decisions that parents make about the time that they spend investing in their children's health, development, and well-being. And we think how a useful way for us to think about this problem is really procrastination. And it is procrastination that creates that gap between aspirational and actual parenting behavior. We may know that we should sit down and go over our letters and our numbers and our early reading skills with our children, but we put it off until tomorrow because life gets in the way or because there's something that at that moment seems more important to us to do. And so the work that we do at our lab is focused on this problem, in particular for low-income parents or economically disadvantaged families. There is reason to believe from some research that economically disadvantaged adults may be more prone to this cognitive bias of present bias. And there's also many reasons to believe that the cost of present bias may be greater for low-income parents. For us, these two things makes it critical for us to understand the role of this cognitive bias in terms of parenting for low-income families. We also think that parenting provides ample opportunity for cognitive biases to get in the way of our good intentions, and especially for problems that arise from present bias. And this is because parenting requires a lot of self-control in the present, to stick to good bedtime routines, to provide consistent time in educationally stimulating activities, and so forth. But the payoff to all that good parenting is way off in the future. We don't read a book tonight because we imagine our child's going to be able to read tomorrow. We do all these things over and over and over again, and they are boring, and they are taxing, and our child is screaming, and yet we keep trying because we believe that there's going to be a future payoff in that child's development if we do so. But because of the monotony and lack of, and the challenges of doing so, it is easy for us to put off doing those activities until some later point. So happily, behavioral science and this whole field of behavioral economics and social psychology has provided us with a toolbox of things we can do to try to adapt to some of these cognitive biases. And so what we're not trying to say, we will never be able to eliminate these biases in how people think. These are just automatic ways of thinking that are shaped by the social context that we encounter every day. But what we can do is try to adapt to them and manage them so that they don't take us down a path of decision-making that is ultimately not as effective as a different one we'd like to take. And so, for example, we have a big toolkit that includes things like making a goal public. So if you make a pledge to quit some unhealthy behavior or save some sum of money in front of a public audience, or even better, in a room full of people whom you trust and whose opinion you value, you are much more likely to follow through on that behavior than simply saying it to yourself that you're going to do that. If I send you reminders of the goal that you made, that can also help you avoid or overcome that kind of procrastination. And so our goal is to harness those insights from behavioral science to help parents achieve their own parenting goals. Again, to help close that gap between what parents aspire to do and what they actually do in the service of supporting parenting in low-income families. So I'd like to tell you briefly about one of our projects from our lab, which was called the Parents and Children Together, or PACT project. And building on the ideas that I just described, we thought that one reason that economically disadvantaged parents read less or spend less time in educationally stimulating activities with their children is this procrastination that arises from this present bias. And we wanted to devise a strategy that would help parents break through those cognitive roadblocks that stood in the way of their reading regularly with their children. So what we did in a study we completed last year was we gave parents, approximately 200 parents who volunteered for our study. These are 200 parents of preschool children enrolled in Head Start programs around the city of Chicago. We gave all 200 parents a digital tablet to borrow and use at home for a 6-week period. And on this tablet was nothing but one app that was a digital library that included over 500 books in English and Spanish. We interacted with English and Spanish-speaking families. And when parents opened up the app to choose a book from the library, the app automatically began audio and video recording the book reading session between the caregiver and the child. And what we did was we randomly divided those 200 parents into 2 groups. And one group, the control group, was simply told, this is a really neat application. It's got a lot of fun books on it, books with words, books without words, books that, reading ability was not a barrier here. And this might be a fun way for you to read with your kid, and please take the tablet and enjoy it at home for the next 6 weeks. That's it, full stop. The experimental group, in contrast, got a whole suite of behavioral nudges or tools. First, they were asked to set a goal for each week. At the beginning of each week, tell me, the researcher, how much time you would like to spend reading with your child using this digital library. Every weekday, those parents got a text message reminder reminding them of their goal to focus on the pledge that they had made to spend whatever amount of time they chose. There was no right answer to how many minutes did you want to spend this week. And at the end of the week, the parents were shown a chart, an actual visual, a histogram, showing how much time they actually spent reading versus their goal that they had set. And we knew the actual amount of time they had spent reading because that audio and video was automatically recording. And we actually watched all the videos to make sure that it wasn't just running with nobody in the background, but we counted the actual number of minutes spent engaged with the book. And then if parents met their goal, they got a congratulatory message on the tablet, letting them know that. And what we found is that at the end of 6 weeks, the treatment group, those parents who had been exposed to that suite of behavioral nudges, had read more than twice as much as the control group. This is a very large and highly statistically significant difference, and it's much larger in terms of treatment impact than many more expensive and intensive programs. Essentially, we did not interact with the families in the treatment or control group, except in a very limited fashion. This is a very inexpensive way to communicate with parents by text and so forth. But we believe that we achieved these quite amazing to us results because the goal setting and those reminders brought the future to the present for those families. That is, we believe that those behavioral tools worked by overcoming the procrastination that arises from present bias. And I want to show you one more chart that gives us some insight into why we think that is so. And we believe that is so because we actually gave all parents an exercise or a test that actually measures their present bias. So there's a number of stylized measurements that one can complete that gives you an assessment of essentially how present biased versus how future oriented you are. And what we found overall is that in general, parents who greatly discounted the future and were the most present biased were the least likely to read to their children. Not surprising. But what's interesting to us is that their reading time increased the most in response to our intervention. So what you can see here is the treatment impact of our intervention for two different groups of parents. On the left, those who were already focused on the future, and on the right, in the maroon bar, those who were focused on the present. And so, as you would expect from all the theory I just described, our behavioral tools, whose goal was to focus families on the future, were most effective for those who had the most growth to do on that dimension. And so what we conclude from this is the following. First of all, and I think quite obviously, low-income parents who don't read to their children as much as do high-income parents, or who are not as engaged on the many different dimensions that we observe, are no less likely to care for their children or to wish for the very best for their children. Perhaps more novel in our estimation is our understanding now that they do not know to any lesser degree that they should read. We know from our surveys that low-income parents understand the importance of many different kinds of parent-child engagement. And in fact, Head Start is designed with the specific goal of improving parent-child engagement in the home environment. And they go to admirable lengths to try to make that happen. But we think that this gap between knowing and doing, or wishing and doing, arises from procrastination. And we think that there is an important, that the gaps in knowing and doing arise from those who procrastinate more. But what's really exciting, we believe, about what we're doing is that this very low-cost, light touch, and highly scalable mode of intervention with parents really seems to play a significant role in overcoming that procrastination and might make a very big difference to those parents' engagement with their children. And so I'd like to turn towards my conclusion and let you know about what else we're learning in the lab to inform future interventions that can address a wider range of children's behavior. And we're not the only ones at the present time who are drawing these insights from behavioral science to change the way we help economically disadvantaged parents and their children succeed. But we believe that we need a much greater effort and a much greater focus on understanding how different kinds of cognitive biases influence parents' decision-making, and how we can use behavioral insights to both enhance existing programs or to create new ones that are cost-effective and impactful. And so all of our work right now at the Behavioral Insights and Parenting Lab is working on solving the puzzle of how we can help parents focus on their children's future, and how, in doing so, we hope we can increase the amount of parent-child engagement in the present. And so we have a number of different but related studies that we're engaged in now that share this common goal. I'm going to just tell you about them very briefly. First, sort of thinking about the box on the upper left, we do need to learn a lot more about how goal setting and reminders work for a wider range of behaviors. We need to find out, for example, how long do you have to text message or remind people before they form a new habit? or before they just think of text messages as junk mail and start ignoring them. And I think texting is super popular right now in my research world, and I think there's a lot of unknowns about how sustainable a modality this is going to be for intervention. But we're doing a project right now called Show Up to Grow Up that focuses on using reminders and commitment devices to increase attendance in Head Start programs. In addition, you really can't text message people to death. You can't text message something for every different behavior. You can't send 5 text messages a day focusing on 5 different behaviors. And so what we're hoping to find and test is one tool that simultaneously changes many different behaviors. And we're working on a different project using a behavioral tool called priming, it's on the lower right, to do this. And in this project, what we're doing is helping parents focus on choosing a primary school for their children to attend, something that's going to come up in the year ahead for parents of preschool children, and to use that choice process to prime or prompt parents to engage in a set of educational activities that will help their children get ready for school. And in this case, what we believe is that the priming creates a set of interrelated positive behaviors all aimed at a common goal. In addition, behavioral science and many other disciplines have demonstrated the power of peer influence. And the children who we care about, who are attending Head Start and other low-income child care centers, we know that many different adults are playing a caretaking role in the lives of these children. We're devising a project that we'll try to get all of the adults to reinforce one another's positive parenting behavior by actually reminding one another and sharing a set of common goals. With the idea here is that we can create positive spillovers among a peer group, or you could even imagine a bigger social network that shares the common goal of behavior change along a relevant dimension. And the project we're working on in that area focuses on children's early math learning. And finally, and also relatedly, one of the things we know is that good decision-making and this ability to make a connection between what you do now and what the payoff down the road is going to look like requires active focus and attention, at least in the beginning when new habits are being formed. The idea here is that once the habits are formed, it's actually not cognitively taxing because it's a habit. But when you're trying to make a new habit, it's incredibly cognitively taxing. And we're working on a project that aims to help parents find their own focus through the use of stress reduction techniques so that they have the cognitive bandwidth to manage these different cognitive biases. And so just to sum up our work and where we're going, we really believe that we are taking a new approach to understanding parenting and to understanding how we might effectively close the gap between aspirational and actual parenting and help support, in particular, low-income parents with their parenting goals. And I think one of the things I'm very excited about is that what we're trying to do is change the assumptions about why different types of parents parent in different ways. And in doing so, think about what kinds of programs are likely to get the biggest bang for the buck. And we believe now that the biggest difference between the way that economically advantaged and disadvantaged parents do parent is not in what they know or what they believe in, and not necessarily even in the challenges in their daily lives, which of course are surely greater for economically disadvantaged parents. But it's about this ability to adapt to cognitive biases. And we believe that this adaptation to the kinds of cognitive biases I've described, like procrastination and many others, is central to promoting parent engagement and children's success. And with that, I would be very happy to entertain any questions or comments. Yes?
You started by talking about started talking about the reading, playing, and teaching. And
Yes.
Maybe there was one other.
Yeah, basic care was.
And you've looked at the reading part of it. What about the other parts of behavioral interaction with children that affects the long-term outcomes?
Right. So there are many, many studies that find gaps across many different dimensions of parent-child engagement. We started our own work with reading. We chose reading not because I'm a reading expert in particular, but in large part because this was something that the Head Start centers were also very much focused on. We always partner with our community partner agencies to try to say, what is it that you're trying to do that our work can complement? And also because, again, as I mentioned, reading in particular is something that in our survey work and our interactions with parents, all parents believe in and value as an activity to do with their children. And we really wanted to start thinking about what is a behavior that parents want to do, that they know they should do, that they're in a context that is trying to promote that, and yet is not closing that gap. So there are many different kinds of other parenting behaviors that we would like to focus on, and this is just sort of where we've started. Yes.
So near the beginning there you mentioned near the beginning there you mentioned some preschool programs that tended to show more significant results than Head Start.
Yes.
Can you just tell me a little bit more about the actual content of that preschool as to why those would show greater results than the current status quo?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question, and it's very much the focus of what I think about. So those particular programs are very special. Peri Preschool and Abecedarian, if you work in this world at all, you will know that they were extremely well implemented, pretty intensive, quite expensive, and very long lasting in terms of children's exposure to those programs. They were also tested in a particular historical era when there were very few other opportunities for kids to participate in. So what you want to think about is kids who got that treatment got the benefit of a program that those in the control group were never going to get. So one reason that the Head Start program has shown fewer effects is because the control group in the present time is participating in a set of programs that look pretty similar to Head Start. And so when you compare treatment and control in Head Start, there's not that big. Head Start does not offer a whole lot more than business as usual for what many children can also participate in. So that's one reason, and that's a little bit subtle. I would also just say that Head Start is a much bigger program with a lot of diversity in the fidelity with which it's implemented in many, many different contexts. We talk about this Peri and Abecedarian. They were very small boutique programs in singular locations. And they have a lot of internal validity. So if you speak in the language of experiments, they were extremely well conducted. We have every reason to believe the treatment impacts that they showed. But for a variety of reasons, the external validity, I think many scholars believe, is less strong because these programs are touted in almost every conversation that you might have about the merit of early childhood intervention, but we have to be mindful of when they were conducted, where they were conducted, and can we extrapolate to what that would look like if we were to have a widespread program like that in the present era. So I'm sorry, it's a complicated answer, but it's a very complicated question. Well, it's not really a part of this discussion, I would say, because Montessori is not generally a program that large numbers of low-income children participate in. So I can't really speak to Montessori. Mm-hmm. Yes?
I'm curious about how
Yes. 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 I couldn't say it better myself, and so thank you for that. And our whole philosophy, as I said, and I hope I made clear, is to try to help parents meet their own goals. And it's very much our philosophy of, as I said, parents, low-income parents are no different from high-income parents in the goals that they have for their children's success. And what we want to do is use these tools to help parents develop the habits that they aspire to develop. And so we have no intention of coming in and telling parents, you should do X, Y, or Z because this is what economically advantaged parents do and you're not doing it. We spend a lot of time talking with parents, talking with, per the earlier question, this is also why we really want to align what we're doing with what the program's philosophy is. We spend a lot of time talking to program directors and trying to understand what it is that they're trying to do and to do work that aligns and complements that.
Great. We have time for just one more question.
Okay, you pick.
Well, thank you. I worked in South Florida for 2 years in preschools, implementing positive behavior support program. And we would do things like have visual schedules where the child would, we would show them where we were in the day, you know, if it was circle time or a different activity, and we would cover up the old activity. They would also take their picture and put it in the area where they were playing. And we had parents begin to implement that with children that they were having a lot of difficulty. So just curious about your thoughts on PBS. Have you worked with the PBS type approach with parents in homes?
We have not. That's all I can say. No. But again, I think our tools really, I mean, the beauty of these tools to us is that they have widespread applicability. You know, this is really about, the bottom line is this is about forming new habits that parents wish to form, that they declare they want to do, and really providing the support and scaffolding for them to do that in their homes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the great conversation, and I invite each of you to continue this conversation during our reception, which will follow my quick remarks. I am what is holding you back from having another glass of wine, so I will make it very brief. I'd like to extend a great thank you to Professor Kalil for this vibrant discussion and fascinating talk about education and moving us forward. I'd also like to extend a great thanks to Denise for sharing more information about the University of Chicago campaign, inquiry, and impact. Denise mentioned the 125,000 engagement goal, and just by being here this afternoon, you're helping us to meet this goal. You are our best ambassadors. You are the key to helping grow the alumni network and bringing +1s to more events like this. Bringing your friends and family, fellow alumni to events like the Harper Lecture help us to strengthen our career networks and reach 125,000 engagement goal. So your attendance today counts on so many levels. Today you have joined the thousands of alumni around the world who are giving to support scholarships and new inquiry, attending events, leading reunions, and so much more. On a local level, we ask for your active participation to become engaged with the Alumni Club of the Twin Cities. We have a specific webpage, UChicagoTC.org. Please look at that website. If you have an idea about an event or a group that you'd like to form, even if you don't necessarily know if there's people that are interested in that idea, create an event. Send it to the university, and you'll be contacted to look at those ideas, events, get like minds together. You know, in the past, last year, we had a great event at Art-A-Whirl. Art-A-Whirl is one of the largest artist community festivals in the United States. Happens in Northeast Minneapolis. We have an alumni that has a studio there. Okay? This isn't just about lectures and professors coming in. It's really about getting involved in the community and getting people of like minds together. Additionally, on Thursday, the 5th of May, there is a live streaming cast, and I have to look this up just because it's a long title, From the Big Bang to the Multiverse and Beyond. It's going to be held at the Bell Museum. 14 other museums around the country are going to have 2 individuals talking about the multiverse, the Hadron Collider, where are we in that process of understanding Big Bang. There is an admission. It's $10. It's at the Bell Museum. You can register directly on our website. These are the type of events that we look for grassroots efforts. If there's an idea out there, just let us know. Also, if you want to be part of the board, if you want to be actively involved, not only in the alumni group, but also in the aspects of interviewing students, there are different organizations here in the Twin Cities that could really use an active approach from our alumni. So with that, I thank you for being here this afternoon, for making the university one of the great centers for education, discovery, and impact. Thank you very much.